All right, so in this video, I thought we would talk about sketchbooks, why I use sketchbooks, how I use my sketchbooks, if sketchbooks are still relevant to an artist's process today. Let's take a look at my most recent sketchbook to start. This looks a lot like a notebook, and that's because it is, except it doesn't have the lines on it. And I really like that about this sketchbook because when I was younger, I used to draw all my comic books on typing paper, notebook paper. And this feels to me like that. I really like the immediacy of that paper and how pens sort of glide on this kind of paper. So this kind of brings me back to that. And they're really not intimidating. I could go through a book like this really quickly because I think this cost me like $3 or something like that. And I don't have to worry about trying to fill it up with really pretty drawings. Sketchbooks can sometimes work against you as an artist if you get too fancy with them. Sketchbooks for an artist are kind of like going to the gym. Like you don't go to the gym to look good and all that kind of stuff. You go to the gym to get sweaty and work out and build new muscles and do the hard work. Same thing with sketchbooks for an artist. This is where you do all the figuring out so that you can then be that much better when you work on your professional work or your finished work. So with that being said, let's take a look at this most recent sketchbook. I just started this fairly recently, so it's only like about a quarter full so far, but we'll see what we got so far. I use these mainly at figure drawing sessions. I go to figure drawing classes and just draw from a live model. And a lot of these are 1 to 5 minute poses. And like I said, I like to use like a ballpoint pen the way I used to when I was a kid. And there's really like a nice immediacy to it. You kind of can't get too precious with it. The paper just sort of glides on, especially when you're drawing from the model. Most of the time you're looking at the model. You're not really looking at what's on the page. It's kind of like blind contour drawing. So I like to have a pen or something, some sort of tool that goes on really, really smooth when I'm doing that. And I feel like a cheap ballpoint pen really works out best for these fast poses. Like I mentioned, I'm not too precious with it. If I don't like a drawing, I'll start over and draw on top of it. It doesn't really matter. If these were beautiful, like thick watercolor pages, I'd feel like I can't do stuff like that, you know? So that's where the cheap sketchbook really comes in handy. I'll also use some highlighter sometimes, and it sort of bleeds through the page, as you could tell, but I don't mind. It also like makes an imprint on the next page, but sometimes that adds like a cool texture to then the drawing that you do on top of it. So it's like little happy accidents like that are kind of cool. This was probably, I think, like a brush pen that I was using. And here's an example of doing a drawing and not liking it and just covering it up and drawing right on top of it. That's kind of the stuff that you could do in your sketchbook. You don't really do that in your finished art, but in the sketchbook you're learning and you're figuring things out. I'll make some notes too, even just like visual notes, like redraw the hand and the arms down here. I indicated that that's a thigh over there. Because oftentimes what I'll then do is I'll take some of these poses and I'll turn them into finished drawings. So if I like a pose, I'll copy it onto a better piece of paper, like a finished piece of paper. I like to use Bristol board paper. And then I'll make a brand new drawing out of it using this pose. So I'll change the character into a new character and put them maybe in like a completely different setting, but I'll use that pose. And the pose, I feel like, is that much stronger because it was informed by reality. And I feel like that always helps your work and makes it stronger. It's kind of like a one step up from even using photo reference. because this was a real life drawing at one point, and when I look back on it, I can remember the pose. So I kind of have that memory as well that informs me, and I feel like that kind of helps make my drawing stronger. I'll also use a sketchbook just to make quick thumbnail drawings. This is for a story that hopefully one day I can finish. Sort of just sketching out quick scenes, almost like storyboard style, that I would then arrange onto comic book pages to make a comic story out of. But this was me sort of just visually trying to figure out the pacing of the story. As you could tell, these are like little stick figures, but at this stage it really doesn't matter. This helps as a first step, and then I could refine until I feel like I have like a solid layout. More figure drawing stuff, more highlighter stuff. When I'm not using my sketchbook for figure drawing work, oftentimes I'm using it to come up with ideas. So this was for a recent editorial piece that I worked on where after I read the article, I just picked up my sketchbook, started making some quick word notes and making some really quick doodles about quick ideas that came to mind. These are really rough, but it's easier for me to generate ideas here. Because if I read, say, an article and then I open my computer and open up a new file and then try to do the sketching straight into the computer, I do that sometimes, but I feel like it kind of slows the process down a little bit. For whatever reason, when I'm in my sketchbook, I'm more inclined to just get more creative and put more ideas down. I'll just draw on top of things. It doesn't matter. I think that's just how I was originally used to coming up with ideas, so this kind of still sticks with me. Sometimes I go straight into digital for coming up with ideas, but I found that when I come up with ideas in my sketchbook, they're just better for some reason. What I'll do, because these are really rough, I'll then take the ones that I like, and those are the ones that I'll bring into the computer and refine those sketches digitally. And it will be those digital drawings that I send to my editors and art directors. Because if I was to send them something like this, they wouldn't know what the hell is going on. So that's about it for this sketchbook. Like I said, it's just about a quarter full. I still got a ways to go on this one. But I'll show you some of my older sketchbooks, how I use those, and how some of the idea generation from those sketchbooks turned into finished pieces of art.